All right, here we are.
Welcome, everybody, to the Business Velocity podcast through the 5 facets of business, where your journey to accelerated success begins. We're your hosts, Dave Newell and Hannah Panuski. In each episode, we dive deep into the 5 facets of business through conversations with business leaders. Whether you're a startup or a seasoned business leader, understanding how to harness these facets can transform your operations and propel your growth. With our guests, we explore actionable insights and share stories. Looking forward to our guest today. Hannah's going to tee up our guest now.
Yeah, so today we have Stephen Belenky with us. Stephen Belenky is described as the anti-coach's coach, which I love. He's not provocative for the sake of being provocative, but he asserts that mainstream executive coaching doesn't solve all the problems all the time in every context. Stephen is educated and trained in organizational leadership, conflict resolution, and mediation, and is hyper-focused on creating the conditions for executive teams to realize the company's potential. Stephen is the founder and showrunner of Hidden, co-founder of Align Collective, and host of his own podcast, Spare Me. He is also a combat veteran, a dual citizen of Israel and the United States, and a speaker on finding your edge in business and in life through grief and trauma. Stephen, let's bring you onto the stage here with us. There he is.
So basically what we're saying is we have nothing to talk to him about today.
Nothing interesting at all.
Nothing at all. Stephen, we're excited to have you here. Stephen is a longtime collaborator and friend. We've partnered on projects together. I've learned so much from him about kind of who I want to be and who I don't want to be. So I appreciate that about him quite a bit. So yeah, let's dive on in. Anything you want to share before we get started, Stephen, about yourself?
Well, I mean, a question. So do you not want to be me? Is that what you learned from the last 3 years? Because if that's the case, then I've changed a life. And if I change one life today, it's all worth it.
It's all worth it in the end.
I know that working with you the last couple of years, there's an essence of you I want to embody more of, for sure.
I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that.
I really appreciate how you think about things, and I'm excited for the audience to hear more about that as well.
Well, here's a coaching question. Can you say more about that?
Oh gosh, I'm being coached.
Can you say more about what's wonderful about me?
Right. Well, talk to me about this statement. Talk to me about this statement, because I think in your nature you like to provoke a little bit, like you like to provide, kind of disrupt what a conversation might normally sound like to get to the real stuff, right? Like I don't see you as a surface level person at all. I see you as a person who's like, hey, let's cut the BS. Let's just get into it. Like, let's kind of get our way through it. So I would love to hear a little bit more about the anti-coach's coach. Like, why do you not want to identify as I'm a coach in the pure sense of what coaching is?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, first of all, thank you for the accolades. I feel seen, and I'm genuine in saying that. It's interesting that you interpreted that statement that way, because that is feedback that I've gotten from clients who've said, I don't want to work with a coach, but I'll work with you. So it's actually the other way around. But Dave, you're poking at something that's very real for me. For years, I have resisted that. I've resisted being called a coach because I've been very squeamish around the coaching community. I've seen it done well. I've seen it done not so well. I've seen unintended consequences of bad coaching. I've seen sinister intent. There's like gurus out there who want to influence people and don't have their best interest at heart. So I have been squeamish about that, but I'm sort of over that now. I've gotten to another place with it, and I was ready to sort of leave that behind. And then I started talking to people out in the world and asking them questions like, well, why do you even work with me? And this is particularly the case with Israelis. They're not like digging this whole coaching thing. They're not. Yeah. And so, but they'll work with me, and we're not a coaching business. So we've created something that is that we believe is distinct from coaching. Our clients believe it's distinct. So that statement's been said not once, but like 3 times. So they're anti-coach, but they want to work with us. So yeah, that's the genesis of that.
So you talk a lot about kind of focusing on leadership behaviors. And you talked about like what your company, what you're building right now isn't coaching. It's distinct from that. So maybe talk a little bit about the relationship between behaviors and anti-coaching.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, it's good. It's a good question. I mean, first of all, we say we create the conditions for executive teams to realize the potential of the business. I'd say unlike prolonged executive coaching engagements and vague leadership development programs, our objective is to work more efficiently to align and optimize the team. So coaching tends to be a lengthy engagement, and I don't want to minimize the impact of coaching. I know great coaches, and I refer people to great coaches all the time. And they're doing work like raising people's emotional intelligence. They're helping people be more empathetic and more curious. They're helping them ask more questions, and that is all really great stuff. Like, I don't want to live in a world where empathy isn't a thing. It's just not what we're there to do. Our work is more akin to triage. There are some behaviors. There are some ways that this executive team is working together or not working together that just isn't working for the business. It's going to get in the way of short-term success, which may be going to market with a new product. It could be, getting through this acquisition. Could be they're integrating new talent. They need to get through that transition, and these behaviors are going to get in the way of that. And so our job is go in, spot it, and make minor adjustments to the team dynamic, so to eliminate any clear and present barriers to the team's immediate success. That's just not coaching. It's certainly not leadership development, which in my experience is, hey, let's do this program and learn these 7 attributes of a leader. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to be, well, maybe I am. It's like, like that's the work you do in peacetime. It's not the work you do in wartime. And that comes directly from my clients. Like, their reaction to leadership development is, talk to us when we get through this merger. It's like, all right. That's, to me, that's not serious. And I'm serious, and my team is serious. Like, we want to do the serious work, which is, our chief growth officer has stopped talking to our chief marketing officer. Can you deal with that? It's like, yeah, we can deal with that. Or like a private equity firm says, our portfolio, our Portco, which is portfolio company for, that's private equity speak. I try to stay away from the jargon, but like, this CEO of ours with this company has stopped picking up the phone, or is going to drive the rest of the leadership team away. And we can't have that because we acquired this company and we want to see a return on our investment. Can you deal with that? Yes, we can deal with that. So we are not in the transformation business. We're in the get in, fix some shit, get out. Yeah. And then if they have a breakthrough in the process, I'll say something like, you know what, you are behaving differently. You've got some potential to be an even more effective leader. I'd get a coach. And by the way, I've got someone here. They are.
Yeah.
Do you find more success with working with teams who have done like the 7 attributes of a leader kind of training previously and then work with you, or more sort of, for lack of a better term, like raw clay, someone who might not have dove into the different ways of being a leader?
That's a great question. Dave, Hannah asks better questions. So
that's fair. I'm not either. Yeah.
No. This is a trio of great question askers, but there's a couple questions that Hannah's asked that have really stayed with me. That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to it. I'm assuming that most of my clients have dabbled with leadership development because so many have,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it was probably against their like will. It was like, do we really have to do this? It's like, yeah, everyone's doing it. All right, we'll do it. So if that's the case, it didn't make a difference in this moment that they are in with their business. Like the 7 attributes of a leader isn't guiding them through this really, really complicated time for their business. It's not, it didn't pressure test them because they're succumbing to the pressure. And that's always been my concern about those programs. Like, does it really pressure test us? Does it make sure that our better selves show up under pressure? Not in my experience. So right now I'm really pissing off a lot of leadership development.
No, it's okay. I mean, no, because and I'll cover that ground. Like I think that there is a really valuable place for it. I think that when done well, it has a really powerful effect. But what you're talking about and where your company aims to step in is when it's not having an effect. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. And by the way, I am always working on my empathy. Like I am not I mean, we can come across in this context a little cold, right? Like we're almost like surgeons and we can feel that way. But when we're in it, we can't do anything unless we build trust. And to build trust, we have to have compassion. We have to have empathy. We got to be great listeners. So we've done the work on ourselves. We've done the work. And I should say, I probably should have said this up front. I have benefited from great coaching. Great coaching. That's why I say there are great coaches out there that know what they're doing and they really respect how effective and how dangerous that profession can be.
Yeah.
Well, I think a distinction I hear you making is that it's really what you're doing is when the stakes are high, right? And I think if you look at leadership development training, broadly speaking, like there's value, there's benefit, and it feels a little bit like you're on a practice field, right? Like, all right, yeah, hey, we're going to go through the reps. We're going to learn, we're going to learn SL2. We're going to learn these different leadership methodologies, different processes. We're going to do Strengths Finder. We're going to do, Culture Index. We're going to do these different things. And we're going to develop a baseline, right? Like we're going to develop practice habits and practice skills so that when we get to the game, hopefully those things show up. But if you've only practiced it once or twice, or you've only read the book, or you've only done whatever, it's difficult. Like if you've only kicked a ball 10 times or 100 times in practice, and then you've never done it with somebody smashing into you, on a soccer field where you're trying to kick a ball in the goal, like good luck, right? Like games are different. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I love that.
I think what I hear you saying is, coaching is good when you're developing the skills and you're actually in many ways creating the conditions or the possibility to be successful in the high stakes moments because you're practicing a skill, but it takes practice. It takes discipline, consistency over time to build that habit. So it's a reflex. Yeah. What I hear you saying is when those reflexes aren't working, when those reflexes aren't carrying forward, when that leadership development isn't carrying forward in the moments that are hard and difficult, like the CEO stopped talking to the CRO, it's like, well, that's toddler behavior. That's hard stuff. Right? Like we're clearly not doing the thing that we've been trained to do in this moment, and it's causing disruption. What I hear you saying is like, we want to go into the high stakes moments and make a difference. And so that's a summary, but also kind of a long way of getting to a hopefully better than Hannah's question, because I need the validation.
Oh boy.
Just kidding.
No, that's good. There's a lot of stuff there I'm going to steal and use in my conversations later today. So keep going.
Because I do want to get to the, when stakes are high, generally speaking, so are emotions. And when emotions are high, I find a lot more resistance to acting differently. So how do you push someone through who's not making a phone call, who's probably not fully in logic brain? They're probably a little bit more in emotion brain. How do you actually get them to do something different?
Yeah. It's a really good question. It is.
Thank you for that. I needed that.
No, it's a good question. Sometimes I just say it's a good question to buy myself some time to process.
I do the same thing. Absolutely.
It's a move. It's a move. And anybody who's listening to this should probably have that move in their toolkit, because it's much better. It's much better than so great question. See, I just did it there. So and it is different with everybody. It's our job to figure out people's pressure point. And I'll tell you what doesn't work most of the time. First, I like to start with what we're not going to do, what doesn't work. Right. Appealing to people's values does not in the context of business. And that doesn't mean they don't have values. Doesn't mean they don't have a moral compass. Most of the people I work with are fundamentally good people. They just have trouble accessing those values in the context of business. My wife said something to me the other day. Maybe it sounds cynical, but most of us don't get to the top of the mountain without sort of ignoring our values at some point and in some way. And I don't think that's necessarily cynical. I think you just don't get to a certain point without relaxing those values a little bit. It's the system of business we've been given, and we're playing that game. So people are fundamentally good. I don't try to appeal to their values. I know their team tries to, and I know their stakeholders sometimes do. I don't focus on that. We focus on consequences. We make sure they're really present to the consequences of continuing to behave in the way that they are behaving. And we keep them really present to the urgency of the moment. In other words, if I'm working with a founder CEO who is in the midst of raising money with a venture capital firm, and it's clear that his behavior, his interaction with investors is going to jeopardize this round of fundraising. Like, they're in the 11th hour and the founder is calling investors. And like, the VC says to me, like, I can't believe the founder is calling investors right now. Like, we just told him to chill out, stay quiet, keep running his business, and we will handle this. And he's like so anxious, and he's so worried about things that he's like getting on the phone with investors, and investors are like, who is this crazy person? This is what I would call an unforced error. It's an unnecessary error in judgment. It doesn't need to happen. And if we were there, we would have made him or her or them very aware of the consequence of that behavior. This will shut down this round of fundraising. It'll jeopardize the future growth and scale of this organization. And we have to like sort of repeat that over and over again. And we have to get them to acknowledge it and to believe it themselves. Like I said, we're not there to transform that behavior. We're not there to retire it. Very few behaviors actually get retired unless you do some serious work on it. You have to like be really intentional about rooting a behavior out. Like Rachel, my partner in life, sharing with me some like major, like exciting thing about our future. And then I meet that with 10 questions. That is a totally ineffective behavior, because I've just like knocked the wind out of her balloon. She just wanted to share something really exciting. And in this case, it's like real estate that we're looking at in Spain. We want to buy a home in Spain. She's doing the research. And she's like, look at this beautiful place. Can you imagine us living there? And I'm like, well, how would that work? So that's a behavior that'll get in the way of us having a really, really great partnership. And so I have to work on that. But if I don't work on it, it's just going to show up all the time. So my long-winded way of saying, we're not there to retire the behavior. We're not there to transform them. We're there to make them hyper aware of the consequence of that behavior showing up in this critical point in their business and the urgency of it. It's like, we got to do this now. Like, you've got to stop talking to your team this way right now, or the deal's over. And I should say that we have to do, this is going to sound slightly provocative, but we don't have to worry about building trust with the client as much when the VC and the private equity team bring us in, because that's accountability enough.
Yeah.
The PEs and VCs we work with say to the founder, or they say to this, this problem person on the team, either stop this or we're going to replace you. And they will, especially private equity. Like, they're all about bringing in a new COO. They're all about bringing in a CMO, and they will replace the founder if need be. Like, nothing's more important than a return on investment. I have to say, we get to resolution faster with that, because, they're the accountability right there. When we don't have that, when a company brings us in, when they're self-aware enough to say, all right, our team is just not rocking and rolling, can you come and help us? We have to do a lot more trust building there. It's a longer process. So I don't know. Am I answering your question? Am I specific enough? I know I can be like 30,000 foot elevation.
No, I think it's good. I mean, I heard you kind of expose the pattern of the behavior, right? So like, hey, this is how that behavior is showing up, right? So you're creating an insight around, you might have this kind of anxiety, and you feel like, you gave the example on the front end, like the CEO calling investors, right? It's like, okay, so this pattern of yours works in some ways. I'm sure that anxiety and that need to like drive and push and feel like you're in control serves you really well sometimes. And in this instance, it doesn't, right? Like, there's a good version of that behavior and there's a bad version of that behavior. Your desire to ask 10 questions probably serves you really well sometimes. But, when Rachel, your wife, is kind of holding up a picture of a beautiful place in Spain, maybe not the best time to exhibit or push that behavior forward. So, I mean, what I took from what you were saying is it's less about like removing the behavior. I love that you said like not retiring a behavior, but it's more about like recognizing the pattern and then making a choice about, when do I use this behavior and when do I not? Can I actually think about it a little bit more as a tool or a resource or as a way of operating that creates an outcome? And the last piece that I thought was really powerful is you talked about it from a perspective of consequences. And that goes back to stakes, right? Like, what is actually the most motivating thing for human beings? If you go to, Kahneman and Tversky's work, it's loss aversion, right? Like, it's consequences, not necessarily dreams, but consequences that motivate us the most. So I think it's a really kind of unique perspective on why are you doing what you're doing. It's not, like you said, not retiring behaviors. It's focusing on, hey, this behavior is creating an outcome and a consequence. Let's modify, adjust, twist, turn, try something different, and see if it actually helps us to achieve the outcome that we're looking for.
Yeah. A couple of things just came up for me in what you said. One is, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the people whose behaviors need to be changed. Like, they're doing things that I'm pretty sure I can't do. And they're growing their businesses in ways that I couldn't grow my own business. I'm at awe by what they do. And I'm in the behavior business. That I know how to deal with. And so I have a tremendous amount of respect for them. And Dave, you've heard me say this a million times. Hannah, you've heard me say this. I'll say to folks, look, you're all extremely talented people. You've had successes I've never had and never will have. Who am I to tell you how to run your business, and how to behave in every aspect and every realm of your life? What I'm not saying, I need you to be a fundamentally different person. What I'm saying is, just for today, not forever, just for today. And then, smart people like Hannah and Dave will come in and say something like, because anybody can do anything for a day. Right. And that's true. That's true. I've heard you two say that before. And it's a variation of what I'm saying, which is not forever, just for today. And that comes from a place of respect for what they've accomplished. I don't see the value in a leader losing themselves in the process of working on a behavior. I do not see the value in that. I've seen leaders become less effective who have worked with people who attempted to transform them, quote unquote, transform them. You lose yourself. And I just don't see that as effective. So I think that's part of the trust building process up front. We make it very, very clear that we're not in the business of telling you you need to be a different person, a different leader, a different parent, a different colleague. Like we're not even going there. We're just saying this behavior of yours really shitty and really ineffective.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm hearing and absolutely, like what I'm hearing and what you're sharing is we think we're full adults all the time, but really our child selves, she's with us, he's with us all the
Every
time.
day.
And when things get hard and things get scary, we revert to our child selves. It's just like it's scientific, and there's lots of really interesting data coming out about it now. But that the trick, the value comes in acknowledging the child self that's come out. Your 5-year-old self is just reacting, but then your adult self comes in and doesn't kick the kid out. The kid needs fostering, the kid needs care, the kid needs attention and love. But this isn't how we need to handle this situation right now. And I think that's a very fine balance, because we often feel like we should be ashamed of our child selves. We should not listen to the part of us that is young. It's not for me, and I maybe tell me if you agree with this. It's not about not listening to it. You need to listen to it, but then you need to sit as a grown person and analyze the situation and make a wise decision, informed by what your child self is saying. But you still need to take the time to make a conscious, intelligent, grown decision, even if it's just for the day.
That was incredibly insightful. If a person tells me that their 5-year-old self no longer shows up, that's like a guru who's going to ask a bunch of people to drink Kool-Aid and whatever. Seriously. But the game is to the most effective people I know haven't made their 5-year-old self go away. They have honed their ability to spot, to use your words, to spot their 5-year-old self in the moment, and in a millisecond say that's not going to serve the moment. So like when my 5-year-old self shows up, it's pretty predictable. I mean, people who've spent time with me, they know my 5-year-old self has shown up when when I'm like overly bullish, when I've stopped asking questions. And all that comes from a place of trying to be like really impressive. I'm sure like I tried to get into somebody's sandbox. I was 5 years old and I tried to get in their sandbox, and they're like, no, sorry, you do not belong here. And that's still with me. It's still with me, right? I want to belong. I want to be impressive. And it doesn't always serve the moment. Sometimes it does. Like, why should I invalidate those attributes? Because those attributes have contributed to my success as well. If I wasn't 100%. Trying to be impressive, if I wasn't trying to be impressive all the time, and if I wasn't trying to belong all the time, I wouldn't have gotten, the proposal wouldn't have been successful, right? I wouldn't have gotten those clients. Like, so I think it goes back to like, honor thyself. Honor thyself, honor thy child self, honor thy adult self, like, because you've been successful. You've had a tremendous amount of success, but also have the ability to spot when that child self is screwing the moment up. And I have to work on this. I shouldn't say have to. I'm really honored to have this as like a lifelong journey. Seriously. But it doesn't go away, Hannah. You said it really well. I just spot it. Like, and I catch myself. So this is like, this is how I might support an executive. I might say like, look, this is what I do when I catch my 5-year-old self. It sounds something like, and Dave, you've heard me say this. One of the tools I have in my toolkit is to call myself out, to put myself on the hook. So to be actually to verbalize out loud in the space when I am being my 5-year-old self. Now, I don't say that because some CEO is going to look at me like I'm a crazy person. What I do say is, let's just say, like, I have nothing to say in the moment that will make a difference. Like, my client is onto something. They're processing something. They're working through a problem, and they're working through their own problem, and they're incredibly insightful. And maybe the most impactful thing I could do in that moment is to just say, hey, is to ask them, can you say a little bit more about that? To say, like, you're on a roll. This is powerful stuff. Keep going. Like, keep going. Get more specific. Get more specific about what it looks like when your 5-year-old self shows up. Just keep going. But instead, I decide to say something really smart. So I shut down her rhythm, because I just needed to say something, because I was so uncomfortable with the fact that I hadn't said anything in 5 minutes. God forbid I don't say anything in 5 minutes. But I can catch myself. I can do something like I'm about to say something, and the client knows I'm about to say something, and I say, you know what? I was going to try to say something, and it wasn't going to contribute. I want you to keep going. So I'm going to take that back. Keep going. That makes a big impact, because what I'm demonstrating in the moment is incredible self-awareness, right? Like, I caught myself, and I announced that I caught myself. Now this person across the table from me knows that I have the potential to screw up a good moment by trying to say something smart, but I also have the capacity to catch myself and to pull myself back. Pull myself back. You will never hear me say in a conversation, or in a business context, or in a personal context, I will never say, yeah, I am who I am. When I hear people say, I am who I am, I say, all right, you're an asshole. Because I want to be effective. I want to be effective. And my clients want to be effective too. And the more they can catch themselves in the moment and be willing to put themselves on the hook, the more effective they're going to be. The more trust they're going to build with their team. The more likely they're going to actually learn something, because they didn't say something smart, but asked a really good question, or just shut up. So, that's the game. That's what we're doing here. Does that make sense?
I mean, one condition maybe in order to honor thyself is that you probably also need to know thyself.
Sure.
Right? Which is like, if you weren't aware of your 5-year-old self, if you weren't aware that the toddler was peeking around the corner, and you just like acted or reacted, or just lived into whatever that feeling or that emotion or that thought was, and you just did it because that's rote response for you in that moment, it's like, well, that's a good way to ensure that you're going to show up the same way and create the same problems, or create the same pattern, or create the same conditions you were creating before, right? So I think a theme for me that's been raising in this conversation is really like insight and then choice are two really big keys to what you do. Like, can I see the pattern of behavior that I'm living into? Can I see the pattern? Can I see the effect of the pattern that I'm living into and the choices that I'm making? Can I take that insight and then make a different choice when I need to make a different choice? Sometimes I might need to follow that instinct, and sometimes I might need to go left instead of going right, and I might need to stop that instinct. I think that's really powerful. It's really profound. And maybe one final question as we wrap up the cast, or the pod. Either one works, really, I think. But I think,
and then I got a question too. Go.
All right. One thing is, as you continue to bring hidden into the world, and as you're building your own business and launching it, what's a choice that you need to make consistently that you have to fight yourself on?
Oh man, I love that question. I just did the thing I said I wasn't going to do. Great question. And the answer is come out of hiding. Come out of hiding. I made a conscious decision a few years ago that I was going to suck up a little less oxygen in the room. And it had less to do, I think it had less to do with my being very present, being ineffective. I don't think that was the issue. And in fact, I am told I'm a lot, and I'm providing value being a lot. So I was solid about that. But I decided a couple of years ago, I just didn't want to be as public. I just didn't want to be public. I wanted to have meaningful conversations with people one-on-one. I wanted to work with teams in a very intimate environment, but I didn't want to share my thoughts and my perspectives in a very public way. I didn't want to serve on panels, and I didn't want to do public speaking. And I probably had some really smart sounding reasons for that, but right now I'm not even sure why. Maybe I was grieving. Maybe it was a little bit of grief. Maybe I was missing my mom who passed in 2017. That's probably part of it.
Yeah.
I also had sort of a bad run with a leadership development outfit that had me second guessing me. Felt like I was losing myself in the process of working with them and working through them, and that wasn't healthy. So I said, hey, why don't I just be a little smaller? Why don't I explore a scenario where I can prop up like a partner or prop up a team and just be the one who's sort of behind the scenes. And for Hidden to be successful, I can't be that way. And I don't want to be that way anymore. I'm not my best self when I'm quiet. And by the way, being loud can take the form of asking really great questions, like throwing yourself in the ring, being willing to get on that panel and sort of mix it up with people. And I'm getting back to that. And for Hidden to grow, I had to make that conscious choice. I had to say to the people I respect, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to have a podcast, and I'm going to be on social media, and I'm going to be doing talks, and I'm going to be on panels. And, I'm probably going to be provocative because that's my nature. And it's going to help the business grow. It's going to help the business be successful. So that was a conscious decision I made. It's a great question. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I think you're right. And it's, just fully ironic that you have a company called Hidden and your behavior is to come out of hiding. I'm like, that's what a brand story right there. That's just great. What's your question back?
Oh, you know what? It wasn't going to contribute. It was just something. Maybe it would have contributed in the moment, but we've moved on. There's no point in going back. So, yeah, maybe I'm just practicing a little bit of what I preach.
I was going to say, look at you practicing what you preach right there, right in the moment.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for joining us today, Stephen. Always so good to talk to you. And Lord knows there's so much more we could talk to you about. So hopefully we'll have you back to talk about more topics.
Amazing.
But actually, let's end it on another fun question that you actually sent to us. What's your favorite color?
Green and variations of green. So we're rebranding over at Hidden, and we've adopted this lime color. We're very minimalistic, black and white, but there's these pops of lime, and it's just making me super happy. Green has always made me happy, but but the kind of green that I like has evolved as I have evolved as a person, as a human, as a business person, as a friend. So lime is where I'm at. And thank you for asking that question. I actually think that's what I like about that question is people are less likely to bullshit me. They're probably telling me something very real, and it may have been the only real thing they said in the entire conversation because they're so buttoned up and they want to be so impressive. And then all of a sudden you hit them with, well, what's your favorite color? And now in a really positive way, I'm seeing their 5-year-old self.
100%.
Like, yeah, right? Like, because we are 5-year-olds. So like, let's honor that too. We all have a favorite color. Don't lie to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm excited to check out the podcast. Spare Me. Do you guys have a go live date yet, or is that coming soon?
Yeah, it's a good question. We hope to go live. We hope to drop an episode before May 10th. We're going to we're going to start recording next week. We've got 7 folks lined up And we're going to drop an episode every other week. And hopefully the first episode goes out before May 10th. And yeah, spare me. I've said bullshit twice. It's a word of mine for sure. The genesis of spare me is, let's talk. We've talked about business. Got it. I can't say I'm really as interested in your business as I am in what that business might have cost you in terms of relationships. So enough business. Tell me something real, and spare me the bullshit. And these are the kinds of conversations I have every day with people. And I think it's going to provide a perspective that we are not getting in business. I hope so. So that's it. That's the genesis for it.
I love it. I love it. Well, I can't wait to check it out. Thank you again for joining us today. And thank you everybody who joined us live. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks all.